To start our press conference today, we have Callahan Walsh with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. Go ahead, Cal.
Thanks, Becky. As she stated, I'm Callahan Walsh from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, and I just wanted to express how excited and thankful we are for everybody to be here today, to be part of this big announcement. When my parents, John and Avery Walsh, started the National Center back in 1984, it was after the abduction and murder of my brother Adam. And they were quick to learn at that time that we as a country were just not equipped to handle the serious issues our children face. And they saw a need for better resources, not just for law enforcement, but for families and for the public as well. And unfortunately, that need really has never stopped. We've heard way too many instances of children and athletes who are not safe. Children should have safe places to learn, to play, to grow, and that, of course, includes sports. As many of you know, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children is the nation's clearinghouse for the issues of child sexual exploitation. So today, we're announcing a partnership with athletes from the University of Michigan and the Ohio State University who were sexually abused by teen doctors at these respected universities. We'll be working hand in hand with these survivors on a program specifically designated for youth sports, which will help educate young athletes around the country about the dangers of sexual abuse by coaches, trainers, and others, and provide instruction on who to inform if they are targeted for such abuse. I can't stress enough how important it is to hear from these survivors, which tremendously helps to not only inform our programs and support we have for other survivors, but also to help prevent future victimization. Put simply, the nature of youth sports gives adults access to kids. So we have to empower not only our youth, but the adults in their lives to recognize the signs of potential abuse and how to take action against them. And that's what this partnership is all about. It really is. And we believe the partnership has the potential to not only educate the public around these issues, but help save lives as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael Wright, who represents hundreds of the athletes from University of Michigan and the Ohio State University. So Michael, take it away.
Thank you, Cal. And my name is Michael Wright, and also on this call is attorney Dennis Mulvihill. As Cal indicated, we represent hundreds of athletes that were sexually abused by their team physician at the Ohio State University and the University of Michigan. These athletes were young, and many of them silently endured years of sexual abuse. My firm is currently litigating these cases against Ohio State University and the University of Michigan. Why we're here today? We're here today because we have top athletes that we represent who want to step up and lend their voice in an effort to rid the sports world of sexual abuse. We believe this partnership with the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children is vital for young athletes and will allow these top-level athletes that we represent, older athletes, to warn and explain the dangers of staying silent if them or a teammate are being abused. This partnership will also give these young athletes tools to utilize if they encounter these types of situations. One of these athletes that we have here today to lend his voice and tell his story is Chuck Christian. Chuck Christian played tight end at the University of Michigan from 1978 to 1982. This includes a Rose Bowl win in 1981. We have Chuck here again to tell his story. Chuck.
Hi, how you doing? Yes, I'm Chuck Christian. I played football for Michigan from 1977 through the 1981 Rose Bowl. And we did win that Rose Bowl. Well, for me, we had a problem with a team doctor who put himself in a position to where he would have access to hundreds and hundreds of student athletes. And he would use that time to sexually violate the players. Now, as players, we didn't realize what he was doing was wrong because we thought that if he was asking us to do certain things or if he wanted to do certain things to us, that there was a medical reason for it. And then when we all felt uncomfortable with the whole situation. But what we did was, for me, I spoke with some of the older players, and I said that, Dr. Anderson did this to me. He penetrated me. And they said, oh, yeah, you're going to have to get used to that because he's going to do that for the rest of your 4 years. And it was uncomfortable, but I thought that it was legitimate. And then I find out later that for 4 years I was being raped by the team doctor, and he did much worse things to a lot of my teammates as well. So it's been a really, really traumatic experience for me. And what I guess I've become like a spokesman for my teammates and Michigan players. And they all tell me to tell their story, and that's what I do whenever I get a chance, is to share the stories of all the players that have been violated by Dr. Anderson. So, and that's what I want to do, is just use my experience to help out as many young people as possible.
Michael, you're on mute. Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck, for that. Next, we have another top-level athlete, Mike Avery, who played lacrosse at Ohio State University from 1988 to 1991. And Mike currently serves as the morning anchor at the Fox affiliate in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Mike, thank you for joining.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. First of all, just honored to be a part of this partnership. Certainly a chance for me to do my little part to help the younger athletes out. My story is not much different than Chuck's, in that as a freshman, 18-year-old kid from Syracuse, New York, we were there for the fall for the quarter, and we had to get physicals. And immediately as I got there, I began to hear the story of, oh, you get to see Dr. Strauss. And I kept hearing it from the older players, and I had no idea what that meant until we actually went into the room for physicals. And it was not like any physical that I had ever had. And so he had his hands on me. He was trying to masturbate me. He was, I was shocked. As an 18-year-old kid, I had no idea what to do. But like Chuck said, in his situations, I thought this was part of the process. Clearly it was not. In fact, I remember leaving the room. I said to one of my teammates, I feel like I've just been assaulted. And, but then from that point on, I as an 18-year-old kid, I just had left home. I couldn't call my parents. I didn't know what to tell them. I felt shameful. I felt embarrassed, that feeling of that I let them down. And so I just kept it to myself for many, many years. That was my big secret up into my adult years until just a few years ago when Mike and his guys decided to go after Ohio State University with Dr. Strauss. So I'd never told my story. So I had issues with relationships. I did not trust anyone. And so now I'm glad to be doing this because I get a chance to maybe, if I can help one young athlete not fall into the same trap, then I feel like I've done my part. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Michael Wright, for your whole law firm. Thank you, your staff. Of course, Chuck, Christian, and Mike Avery, you both are such strong voices in the space, amazing advocates, and can't thank you enough for joining the fight. So we're going to now open it up to questions. I think there might be some questions in the chat, but I believe Becky's going to open up turn off the mute button on everybody's end so you can jump in with questions at your leisure. Thanks.
Everyone should now be able to unmute themselves. If there are any questions, feel free to ask them. If not, then we will conclude. And if you would like a recording of this, just let me know. Jennifer Chambers cannot unmute herself. Jennifer, you should now be able to unmute.
Okay, hi. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. My name is Jennifer Chambers. I'm a reporter with the Detroit News, and I wanted to ask if someone could explain the program and how it will help young athletes avoid these situations. Can you specifically go over whether there'll be a class, a program, and how will these athletes be reached? Will it be done through some university set up, or is it going to be through the center, and is the center hosting trainings at facilities outside the schools? Can you explain logistically, and then what it'll look like?
Absolutely, great question. The program is budding as we speak, so still putting together all the resources and programs, and that's going to be a big part of this partnership. Survivor Voices really help inform the resources that we provide to other survivors and potential victims, and so we want to make sure that we hear our survivors and understand from them what they believe to be the best practices. Of course, combined with the information and resources here at the National Center, we have some great child safety prevention education programs that currently exist, and some great experts here that know how to put those programs together to make it bite-sized and informative, but empowering for youth athletes. So the program will have many different functions. We'll have tips and best practices, discussion guides for parents. We're looking at an introductory video for parents talking about the issues within youth sports, a coaches module as well, which will be a more robust training that will provide a certification for, but also resources directly for the athletes. We want to empower them to be able to go to what we call a trusted adult, to be able to find somebody that they can speak out to and be able to talk about what has happened to them and be able to disclose. So the program will be age appropriate. So we'll have resources for younger athletes and parents, but of course we want to make sure that all athletes are covered, including university athletes. So the outreach is going to be done through our program, but also I'm sure Michael Wright's group will help spread with their connections in different universities and youth sports groups that they're in touch with. And we have a great outreach team that really goes out there and into schools and communities to get our resources and these programs into the hands of those who use it best. And we're really looking forward to informing this program by the Survivor Voices and getting it out there and protecting youth. Of course, we want to make sure children aren't exploited in the first place. So prevention is a key here at the National Center. It's a big part of our mission, and we're making sure that this is included in our mission as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, when will the program actually start then? Is there a timeline that you expect it will actually be underway?
That's a good question. I think we're thinking fall, possibly. Don't hold me to it. We want to make sure that we can, of course, have the resources, enough resources that are appropriate for rollout, but we will be continuing to build this program as we see it, continuing adding other resources and valuable information to both parents, coaches, and training staff as well.
Would Mike or Chuck like to say what they think could have helped them at the time that they experienced their assaults? Like if there was like a phone number or a person, I guess, do the athletes want to talk about any ideas they have on what they think could be helpful for these types of situations?
Okay, this is Chuck. Yes, I think for us, if there had been someone that we could go to let them know that we were having problems and issues with Dr. Anderson, somebody that could really do something about it, and not just one of the coaches or trainers who just laughed and chuckled about it. If we had somebody that had the power to make things happen, to expose Anderson and to make sure that that things got done and that he got dealt with. Because if we had, or a number that we could call, a tip line or something where we could call and let them know that, this is going on in Michigan, because if that had been available back when Anderson first started, it would have saved a lot of people a lot of misery.
Yeah, Jennifer, I could just chime in a little bit. Same as Chuck, as far as we had basically laughed it off to, this is part of the experience. Obviously, looking at it now as an adult, looking back, it would have sure been great to have maybe some kind of a social worker, someone who has a background in sexual abuse, who is a point person on campus that we could have gone to that was aside from the athletic department, because then therefore we don't feel like, oh, if I say something, I'm going to lose playing time. You know, they're not going to let me play at all. So where it's almost anonymous, but you can sit and talk with someone and talk about the things that have happened to you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, can you all hear me? Okay, great. This is Nick Evans. I'm with WOSU in Columbus, Ohio. I'm curious, like, what part of this this module is going to be aimed at sort of more the structures that athletes operate in? Because I hear you talking about athletes reporting, but one of the things we've seen with, especially the Strauss case, is that some athletes did come forward and their complaints fell on deaf ears. So what sort of education are you guys putting together for authority figures so they can be that trusted source and they can recognize complaints when athletes come forward?
Absolutely. That's another great question. I apologize. It's raining terribly here, so if the audio is a little bit murky, I apologize. Again, a great point. And I think a lot of that has to do with changing the mindset around child sexual abuse in sports. I think understanding that this issue exists, it's ongoing, it happens both to male athletes and female athletes. Changing that dialogue and that understanding and not making this a taboo topic or something that just can be laughed off is going to be a big part of that. And informing the organizations themselves and making sure that there are safety nets and checks and balances in place securely or specifically for the athletes is the most important part. Athletes are what needs to be taken seriously, and they're the focus of what's going on here. And creating programs in which there are safety nets so that these reports don't fall on deaf ears. And God forbid if they do, those people are held accountable as well. I think that's what we've seen in the past is coaching staff who were afraid to confront the coach, the head coach. You know, many of these coaches are looked at by parents, staff as infallible. They're not. And that's a big part of changing the dialogue and the understanding around here and making sure that these universities are taking this seriously and other youth sports organizations are taking this seriously and that these athletes have an outlet and that outlet is legitimate. That's how we plan on changing the landscape of what we've seen in the past around child sexual abuse in sports.
Jim Nelson from Channel 19 in Cleveland for both Mike and Chuck. What would you say to young student athletes who might be suffering in silence as we speak?
Go ahead, Chuck.
Okay, I think first of all, they need to know that there's nothing to be ashamed of. They were victims, and that that they didn't do anything wrong. And I think because that's part of the biggest problem that the kids are having, and is knowing that that this happened to them, and then they carry so much shame. But also to get somebody, to get in touch with somebody professionally that they can talk to this, talk through this with, because you definitely need somebody to speak with. Because I know even with for us, a lot of the guys, after ESPN did an article on me, then all the guys started calling me and saying, "Thanks, Chuck, for telling our story," and Chuck, this is my story, and they would share their stories, and it would bring me to tears because for a lot of the guys, they had never spoken about it to anybody in their life. So they were just holding all that in. And when they spoke to me, they knew I was safe to talk to because I had been in the same boat. So that's what I think that is very important.
I would just say that, and Cal had touched on this earlier too, is having someone that you absolutely trust, and it can be a grandparent, it could be someone, it doesn't have to be mom and dad, but someone that you've had a relationship with, that there's true trust there. Maybe it's a coach from a youth program that has always had your back and has always been there for your family. that would be where I would go. I didn't have any of that, quite honestly. And so when I didn't have my parents, I had to keep it to myself because I had nowhere else to go. At least that's how I believed.
You know, Mike and Chuck and I had a conversation yesterday, and we talked about the calculation that every athlete needs to make when they decide to report or not report. Is that losing playing time? Is that losing a scholarship? Is that losing respect from your peers? That calculation needs to result in only one thing: the abuse to stop and the person who's responsible to be held accountable. That's what we're aiming for here.
That's right.
Dan Murphy, go ahead. You can. I think we do have time for your question.
Oh, Dan Murphy from ESPN here. I just wanted to see there are some groups within the U.S. sort of sanctioned national governing bodies for youth sports that have policies and best practice and that kind of in place for reporting abuse. I'm curious if you see your program being complementary to that or working with that, and if there are other youth sports organizations like Little League or Pop Warner or that type of thing that you're going to try to partner with as this develops.
Absolutely. We don't operate in a bubble at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We play well in the sandbox with others, and that's what it's really about, leveraging the partnerships that we have with other youth-serving organizations and other organizations that are in this space as well. I think we can all lend information to each other and resources and build on what one organization has and what another organization doesn't have. We want this to be complementary, and we want to again, join forces and do everything we can to protect the athletes. That's what it's about. And locking arms with different youth leagues and other organizations in the field is absolutely the way to go about it.